Welcome to the Foolproof FSBO podcast. I'm Tim the FSBO guy, and this is the show that helps homeowners sell their homes without paying that $31,000 agent tax. Hey, every week I'm going to share real strategies, simple tools, and proven checklists that make selling your home yourself safe, fast, and profitable. So if you're ready to keep your equity and stay in control of your sale, you're in the right place. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right. Holy smokes. It is Friday. I can't believe it. It's already Friday. This week has flown by. My gosh. Folks, what's going on? Tim Street here, Tim the FSBO guy. Happy to see you again, all one of you. Hi, Mom. You're probably the only one watching right now, but that's okay. I've got really awesome backup today, which is super cool. Today, I brought my friend Loren Wernette on, and the reason I wanted him on today is because we're going to kind of challenge something that a lot of homeowners and I would say newbie sort of investors like I was believing that's a rental cash flow necessarily equals financial freedom. It's just one comes right after the other. And Loren's great because he's actually a fund manager who specializes in solving some of the more complex and third and fourth order consequences that devolve as a result of that sort of thinking. And I know like one of his big claims to fame is he actually is not going to say this, but I'll say it for him. He's made a lot of people very happy with the kinds of returns that he's been able to deliver to his investors. So listen, if you're out there and you're kind of wondering, hey, you know, I'm in this universe of wondering maybe I could do this. I've seen people make money. I hear all the time that real estate investing is passive and all I have to do is buy a house and then I go hang out on the beach somewhere. This might kind of pop some of those bubbles that you have. Definitely not doing any hype here. We're going to do a lot of math today and decision making. So with that, Mr. Loren Wernette, thank you so much for joining us today. And I would love to hear in your words, did I miss the mark there, or are we pretty much aligned on what we're going to talk about today?
No, I think you nailed it. I fell into that lie, hook, line, and sinker in the past, and love to kind of debunk that terrible, terrible myth.
Yeah, gosh, where were you 5 years ago? I was I was
making these mistakes.
Yeah. Same, brother. Same. Hey, listen, in the chat, let me just tell everybody here, if you're currently looking at this, drop a city in this or your state, whatever, in the chat. If you have any questions, shoot them out to us. I'll actually open up my little panel here that will allow me to answer any chat that comes in real time. And if anything comes up, Loren and if I can't answer it, I know Loren can. So Loren, let's talk about you, brother. I mean, I would love to know, you know, from a triage standpoint, what is the biggest problems that you see folks like me, new guys coming into the space when I was getting into the space years ago? What kind of mistakes were you seeing? And, you know, are they preventable? What would you advise people to look out for?
The whole can of worms there. Before I get started, public safety announcement. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So go out and make sure that your spouse is taken care of. Back to the regular scheduled program.
I took care of mine yesterday. My wife is awesome. We don't have this thing where it has to be on the date. So like we're smart enough to say, hey, let's celebrate Valentine's Day on an off day, so we're not sitting in line. You know, so yeah.
We've been together 18 years, and so it's like, oh, do you want to go out on Valentine's Day? God, no. Like, here's a Starbucks, and we'll figure something else out later.
For sure. I love it.
So. Back to your question. So when you're first getting started out, and like when you get started out with anything, there's like, you have all these options of what you can do, and you think everything is an opportunity. And the biggest lie that most of us are sold is, I'm going to buy 5 rental properties. They're going to each cash flow $400 a month. That's $2,000 a month. And I'm going to be able to use that to support my lifestyle. I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to buy a boat, and I'll be able to do my other things. And because they're passive, you know, I just put a tenant in there, the checks show up in the mail, I continue about my life, everything's hunky-dory as I'm on my boat, right?
Dude, sign me up. You just sold me. I want in.
I'm gonna name my boat and roll. And what happens is, you buy first, it's harder than you think to find properties that cash flow $400 a month, right? Especially in this day and age. 2, once you get those properties, it's chasing tenants to make sure the rent's actually paid. The tenants have, you know, repairs that you have to make. You've got to pay for those repairs. And then you get everything going and you collect 6 months worth of rent. Things are actually going well. And then the roof goes out or the HVAC goes out. And suddenly now, that $1,200, $1,500 that you've collected and sat on, hopefully you haven't spent it, now goes directly back into that asset to, improve the CapEx, to fix those repairs, and to keep it cash flowing.
Right.
And so what most people think of is they're going to use cash flow to support their lifestyle. And what really cash flow is there for is to ensure that the property stays afloat while you hold it for 10 years, 5 years, however long, and it appreciates. And at that point, that's where the real wealth is made. And that's where you can have a payday by, selling it and doing a 1031, or selling it and just taking the cash, or doing a refinance and pulling some cash out. But, that's the first step.
I don't want to wait. I want my boat now, dude. I don't want to wait 7 years.
Real estate is get rich slow. It is not get rich fast. If you want cash flow that you can live on, then you need to start a business. Businesses are where you get cash flow to live on. Rentals are think of them as brick and mortar retirement funds.
Yep.
They just need to be there.
It's so funny you say that, because I could not agree with you more. And I'd love to get your opinion and see if there's a caveat there. And when we say rentals, I think you and I and most people, we consider, long-term rentals. You buy a home, you get a family in there for years. I look at short-term rentals, and I almost see that as more of a business. And I think that's the direction you're going, because I definitely have had a lot of success generating great revenue off my short-term rental portfolio. And I know that people have asked me about that in the past. And I think the biggest difference, and I think you nailed it, Loren, is it's not passive, dude. At running a short-term portfolio is about the furthest thing from passive that you could. It is a pain in the ass. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, you have to be devoted to doing this, because if you're not top performing against all these other people who are taking it seriously, you're going to get left in the dust by the algorithm. Nobody's even going to rent your place. So just want to get your thoughts on that as well.
No, I mean, I think when you think about passivity versus income, think of it as a scale, and you have the same amount of weights. And so if you take weights off of the passive side, right, then make it more passive, it's going to come down, and your income is going to drop, right? And then if you the other way around. So the more passive something is, generally the lower you're going to return. Just like the more risk something is, the higher there is to, you're going to get return generally. So you're 100% right. If you want something that's truly passive and you don't have any work to do whatsoever, you just want money come in, buy bonds at 5%. That's right. As passive and as secure as you can get. If you want something that's going to outperform the market, there's going to be work involved. Even if it's an LP investment or some fund, there's upfront due diligence, there's management of, just watching things as they go, there's attending meetings. That's fairly passive, but there's still work involved. There's no free lunches in this world. And so for those of us that want to drive the ball forward and make really good returns, there's a high level of work that's required, either mentally or physically, or sometimes both.
Yeah, no free lunch indeed. I had a friend on, I think last week, Debbie Balfour. She's amazing, and she didn't. I don't think she coined this, because she told me that a friend of her told us this might actually be kind of a trope in the industry. But she said that money is like a woman. The less attention you spend on it, the less you're going to get from it. And I think she's absolutely right. Your investments you got to treat them as a relationship. You need to be involved. You need to be checking in on them. And if not, it's going to ghost you, brother. And I think you learned that, both from your experience of your own and seeing other people do it. And what's really cool about what you did, though, is you pivoted and created a fund around that reality, which I thought is super cool, because that's something I never would have thought of to do in a million years. I don't think a lot of people actually have that kind of mind that would have come up with the idea. Can you tell us a bit about how you came up with the idea and what you're seeking to do with that?
Yeah, I mean, so I had owned 65 rental properties at one point.
God,
and
you're alive to talk about it.
And I have a lot. Yeah. So at one point, 65 rental properties. We had done 20 flips. I had a small wholesale company. I had a W-2 still, had 4 kids. So it was busy.
I'm going to shut the hell up. Next time I'm feeling bad about my workload, I'm going to call you and be like, bro, tell me about the bad times. That's nuts, brother. You've got Superman blood going through your veins. I'm telling you, that's insane.
I always tell people that I think to get from where you are now and where you want to go, there's a certain number of what I call pain points that you have to endure. And you can choose to cram all of those into a very tight window and get there faster, or live a more comfortable life, but it's going to take a lot longer to get there. And so I jammed as many pain points into a 2-year window as I possibly could, working from 5 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. And basically took myself from knowing nothing about real estate in 2020 to owning 2 funds with, having raised $20 million, had 65 properties, had flipped a bunch of houses, and a bunch of loans out right now.
You deserve it. So I love it. Yeah. Sorry, I had to tell me about this fund.
So the whole concept of the fund really was a solution to a problem. So when I had all the rental properties, I knew that managing rentals wasn't what I wanted to do, because I had been fed hook, line, and sinker that lie of passive income. And I looked at myself in 10 years, that's not where I wanted to be. I had a small lending company that I had started at that point, and that was going well. I said, this is where I want to go. I want to be able to structure deals. I want to be able to be a capital allocator, taking resources from, investors, giving them a really good return, and then being able to deploy it in the market for profitable deals. And so initially we were doing one-offs, like think of syndications, right? We find a loan, we find 2 or 3 investors, they give us the money, we have, interest rate of whatever, and then we pay them, some subset of that, and we keep the spread. Yeah. Was growing great, but I never knew how much those investors had in their pocket. And so I couldn't go to you and you come to me and say, hey, I need $300,000. Now I'm like, oh, maybe I can do it. I got to make some call. Yeah. And it wasn't scalable. Right. And so we said, how do we fix this problem? Well, how do we fix that is we figure out what the structure is, where we can bring investors money in. We can give them a much better return. We can have them participate in profit shares. And now we know how much money we actually have in the pool at any one time. So I can operate on a very customer focused level of, you need money, I can get you funds in 10 days. That's right. Awesome. Our average turnaround time on a loan is 12 days right now. Awesome. So that's kind of how the fund started. And then from there, like once you have that concept in your mind, now all of a sudden, all these different things start opening up. Like, how could we use this, and how can we structure this differently to make it even more safe, and to make it more beneficial to our investors, and to make sure that we can adjust and grow our business as the market shift and as we grow and mature as investors.
Here's what I love about, and I don't know if people caught this, so I want to make sure that they tune into what you just said, which is being able to liquidate funds in a matter of days, not weeks. And so one of the most frustrating things I found as a rookie investor, and I've had this same pain point brought up over and over again, is these investors, they will just go through hell trying to find that diamond in the rough, that one where the numbers, because guess what? Majority of the time, by the time it even hits the market, it's already been picked over. It's not that great of a deal. So for somebody to strike gold, and then they figure out, well, how the hell am I going to pay for this? Well, now they go through this traditional cycle. And dude, by the time you get your ducks in a row, that thing is gone. So by you saying, listen, 12 days, I've got you covered. That is such a giant service to the investor community, because there's nothing worse than finding that gold nugget out there and watching some guy who already had his funding aligned come out and snatch it from underneath you.
Yeah. I mean, cool. So one of the biggest things that I learned early on, it wasn't early enough. When I started, I thought that the limiting factor for most investors' growth was capital, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. I can't buy more properties. If I just only had more money, I'd be able to find more properties. Well, what you find is that there's tons of money out there. Money is almost infinite. What is really the limiting factor is the deals that you can find and your ability to manage and operate them. And so if you can put 2 things together, I can find excellent deals and I'm a fantastic operator. There is no end of amount of people that want to sit back, stay in their W-2, sit on their boat, and give you their money so that they can get a piece of the action.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like that scene in Interview with a Vampire where he comes out and the world is just full of color now. And it's just like amazing. It's like seeing the world with a different set of eyes when you actually see what the real limiting factors are. I think if more people saw that, they would take this part of the equation so much more seriously, which is establish yourself, start providing value in that community, start becoming like a giver, and people are naturally going to want to help you. I think that's cool. And it leads me to my next question. So all of this is impossible without you facilitating it, but also none of this would be possible without people willing to invest in you and the deals that. So what kind of people, what kind of investors come to you? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we've been raising capital since I was buying those 65 rentals, and a lot of it is IRA owners, just normal people, right? People you wouldn't even suspect. So IRA owners, people have self-directed IRAs or Roth IRAs that they just need a place to put money. A lot of them are real estate investors. They can't use those funds for their own stuff, but they want to put it into real estate, and so that's a big piece of it. And a lot of it is like C-level people, so high-level earners, attorneys, doctors. They are very interested in investing in real estate. They just don't have the bandwidth, right? And what I've come to find is a lot of people will come to me and say, hey, I want to buy rental properties. I have this great job. I have all this money. I want to invest it. I don't want to just put it in the stock market and earn whatever the stock market's giving me. I want to buy some rentals for a long term. And so I sit down with them and I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to do this and you're going to have these problems. And this is how you're going to find a property. And it's going to take you 6 months. And these are the learning things. And after an hour of having dinner with them or whatever, they're like, that's a lot. Is that going to impact my life? I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. You're going to get calls from the property manager.
You mean I don't just get free money? What the hell is this?
Yeah, it's going to impact you. It's going to take time. It might not be a ton eventually, but it's going to take a lot of time. And so 6 times out of 10, they're like, well, can I just give you my money? And again, a little more passive, a little less return versus less passive, more high return. So that happens quite often, that conversation.
Well, and I think a lot of the times too, like I can imagine being a fly on the wall of that dinner conversation and, asking simple questions like, well, what happens when you have a big CapEx event? What happens when one of your tenants decides that your living room floor would be a great fire pit and you've got a $1,500 security deposit from them? What then? This property you've been making $400 a month on. And I don't think a lot of people have really thought through, there's a lot of stories out there of great tenants. And then there's a lot of stories out there about not so great tenants. And our own confirmation bias as humans is we tend to only gravitate toward those stories that confirm our natural inborn beliefs or desires, which is, gosh, I really want to be a landlord. And hey, I'm a good person. I was a good tenant, so I expect other people to be. And I think that it's just when people go down that path and they talk to somebody like you who has done this with 65 freaking doors, by the way, which is just insane to me, but God bless you for doing it. You've got more experience in your pinky than most people have in their whole body as it relates to how many things can go wrong, how often they'll go wrong. If somebody were to ask you and just say, Loren, I have to make 120 grand. I need 10 grand a month. How many rentals are they going to need to do that? Number one. And number two, let's net out all the nasty surprises they're going to get. I mean, your experience, you had 65 doors. Where did you feel like you crossed that threshold?
I mean, 65 doors, something's always breaking, always.
Yes.
And so it's hard to say. I mean, I want to say that we had close to $50,000 of monthly take from rental income on a monthly basis, right? But there was always turns. Turn is super expensive. It's a couple $1,000s just to paint the walls. There was always things that were broken. I don't know how many times I got phone calls from police saying, hey, there was a fight at this property and someone threw a brick through the window or something happened, right? And so I caution anybody that thinks that they can just say, oh, I need $10,000 a month and I'm going to, that's X number of rental units at whatever, you need to be, maybe if you have those fully paid off. I think that there is probably a path to use cash flow to live off of, but you got to have a lot of cash up front in order to have very, very low leverage on those properties so that your debt service is very low. Because when you're figuring out what your cash flow is going to be, your biggest things are going to be is your debt service, and then you also need to figure in taxes and insurance. And then the pieces that people don't usually figure in or they forget about are how much are you budgeting for vacancy, right? If it's in an A-B area, it's probably 1 or 2%. If it's in a C-D area, it probably needs to be north of 10% of
Plus
what
the
your
bricks of the
gross rent.
window. Yeah.
Plus wind, yeah. And then you got CapEx. How long is the roof going to need to replace? How long until the HVAC goes out? HVAC goes out, that's an entire year's worth of cash flow. Like not just gross,
right.
Cash flow. Gone.
Yes. And that's like people. I don't think people hear that when they think about going into this. They've been like, reading too many Bigger Pockets articles, and they've been like, which there's some great info on there, but I think also there's like a lot of, it's easier to get people to like you when you just confirm their beliefs, and it's easier to get people to want to. And so like the news and the media, they're in this weird predicament where on the one hand, the old saying was, if it bleeds, it reads, right? Bad news sells, but good news keeps subscribers. Good news keeps people coming back and wanting to feel that dopamine hit and say, oh yeah, these guys like me. These guys believe in me. And, when they hear a message, and I want people to hear your message because it's coming from a position of love. You're not saying people can't succeed. You're not saying people shouldn't or couldn't do these things. You're saying you want to see them do it cleanly. I want to see, and I'm the same way. I want to see people make the right choices with the right information, with the right reasons, and going out there and trying to leverage yourself into where you're in a 95% debt position in an asset that's cash flowing $400 a month. You're smoked. You're cooked within 6 months. I guarantee you are going to incur some sort of a loss in that property. And you're just, without all those other mass volumes to spread that risk around, you're in trouble. But this isn't to say you don't bet on yourself. And that was one thing that I remember you saying, especially in our episode when we were talking on your show, we talked about the value of betting on oneself. And I know that you're a big believer in that. So if we're saying, okay, well, pump the brakes on, being the next big landlord of the century. And what does, in the context of when you say bet on yourself to a new investor, what would that look like?
You got to know where you are as a person and from a finding one time, right? If you are hey, I need to find 100% financing, I'm going to get rentals, but I have no cash. Like, being a long-term rental landlord, probably not the right initial play. Doesn't mean you shouldn't get there. Like, there's tons of people that have a lot of rentals and make a lot of money. But your issue at that point is where you're going to get cash flow from. And the best way to get cash flow is to either start a business or do wholesaling or something that's, doesn't have that long tail on it from a cash development standpoint, but has immediate quick hit of cash. And that's where you need to go until you get some cash reserves. And then you can start putting them into those longer term, investments like rental properties or whatever else. So that's the first thing I say is you got to know where you're at. And I'm by no means saying that you shouldn't buy rentals. I just want everyone to go into it with their eyes wide open of what to think about. And when we talk about betting on ourselves, like anything you do new, you're going to have things you don't know about, right? You know the things you don't know the thing, you know some of the things that you don't know, but then there's also the things that you don't know. And those are the ones that get people. And so just going into any new thing and trying to figure out what are the things I don't know, and how can I mitigate some of those risks? But you have to start taking action because too many people, and I see this all the time at local real estate meetups and whatever it is, well, I don't know this and I don't know that. And so I'm not going to get started. I got to figure these answers out first. And to some extent that's true, but in a lot of ways, like you're not going to figure that out until you actually do it. Think about, if I wanted to learn to make a cake, I'd never made a cake in my entire life. Am I going to learn more reading a book about how to make a cake? Or am I going to learn a lot more about actually mixing the stuff together and putting it in the oven and seeing what happens? There's a trial and error component after you know a certain level of information that you have to go through. There's a trial by fire that you have to go through to get some of the nuances that just don't show up in the literature. And, it's these things like, then you're surprised by them, right? And you take them to somebody that's been doing it for 20 years. And like, oh, did you know X, Y, and Z? And they look at you like you're crazy. Like, that's like common knowledge. Like everybody knows that, right? And it's this weird place where experienced investors have gotten to a point where they have forgotten all the little things at the beginning that they didn't know. And so they just feel like, oh yeah, LTV needs to be 70% and you put blah, 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 and it's done. Right. And they forget this whole level of stuff that's just background noise in their head that they don't even consider because it just comes naturally.
Yeah, it's funny. I was in a coaching program with one of the best, most talented people I've ever seen in this space. His name is Loren, and he's a real estate coach. And he had this saying that, again, he didn't come up with it. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of like old apocryphal sayings, but the learning's in the doing. And he was a big believer that wrong action is better than no action. It sounds like you kind of subscribe to the same thing.
100%. There is no succeed or fail. It's succeed or learn.
Yeah, just 100%. I love that. And so like, I guess then you have to kind of address the cost of waiting for certainty. What does that cost? If you're somebody who doesn't take any action until you know 100% of something, which as we all know is impossible, what's that cost?
What's the one thing that none of us can get any more of that's disappeaing every day?
Well, for most people, it's time. Me, it's hair. But no, actually, I
actually shaved gone already, Tim.
Yeah.
Or it's just migrating.
Sure. So Valentine's Day, we don't talk about that, bro. But yeah, man, that's amazing. It is. It's time. It's the single most precious resource. And getting into that analysis paralysis, where all you do is examine the deal, and never pull the trigger. You never get to do that thing where you said you either succeed or you learn. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in. I don't love to fail. In fact, I dislike it, but I've shifted. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been comfortable with kind of gambling on myself is I know that no matter what happens, whatever outcome, I'm going to learn something and I'm going to be better the next time around. And I like to see you teach that to people as well.
So words have power. And you just said something. You said, I don't love to fail. So you are already in your mind shifting that if I don't do what I said, or if something doesn't go right, that it's a failure.
For sure.
So I would challenge you to, instead of saying, oh, I love to fail, right? Take that word out of your vocabulary. Like I try to get my kids not to say, I can't do something. It's not that you can't do something. It's you don't want to, or it doesn't, right. It's not appealing, whatever, right? You don't love to fail. You aren't a big fan of the opportunity to learn hard lessons.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, it's true. 100%. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to work that into my vocab. I need one of those like rubber bands where I can like snap myself every time I say that word. That's how you stop swearing. I've been told. I got to try it one day. I'll learn.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in that. So,
the outside of the opportunity costs, obviously, of waiting around for perfection, I'm curious, to learn. And this sounds like the voice of experience talking. Everything you're telling me sounds like the voice of experience. So I'm curious, what was that big wrong move, if you're comfortable talking about, that you made that taught you a hell of a lot more than you would have learned from a success or a safe move?
Which one to pick? There's, when you've owned that many houses and done so many things in 5 years, there's just a lot of things that you've messed up on. I think if I was going to take several of them and can kind of push them together, I think the biggest learning that I've had is that when something seems too good to be true, you need to take a step back and actually look at it, because it often is. I'm not sure how many deals that I've looked at and this is a fantastic on paper, right? We're going to make all this money. It's going to go great. And then the project takes longer than expected. The tenants are terrible. The loan doesn't come to fruition the way you expected it to, all these things. And if I just, looking back, hindsight, 2020, it seemed so good and greed got the best of me. And so I moved forward with it. And if I just taken a step or had a little bit more experience, something, then I probably would have mitigated risk. I might've still done it, but I would have done it differently, or maybe I wouldn't have done it in some cases. There was a great example. We had, we bought 2 buildings. They were both 4-unit apartment buildings, right? So 8 units. And one building was totally gutted. Like they had built it in 1986 and never put interior walls on it. So we had 4 units, and then basically a giant, exactly the same building, just next door, no interior walls. I'm like, this is great. We're buying it for like $300K. We're going to put, a couple $100,000 into, interior work. You're going to have 4 more units. We'll have an 8 unit. That's large multifamily. We can get a, refinance on it, pull our money out, or sell it for a really good amount of money. And then you get into that project, and then there's all these permits, and there was septic issues, and there is, all these things that happen, and a project that should have been like 9 months turned into like 2 years. And then the structure we had with our investors wasn't as great as what we would hoped. And, investors got great money, and I walked away after 2 years worth of work with like $10,000, but I learned a ton of stuff, and I walked away on the positive. And so
you didn't lose. Yeah.
You didn't lose. And so you take all those lessons and you convert them to the next thing. Right. And so that one taught me about knowing what you're getting into from a project development standpoint, knowing what you're getting into from a permitting standpoint, being extra diligent on how the structure is with the investors and with the partners and all that. Really keep an eye on timelines on projects. And so there is a number of different lessons that were learned in all of that thing. And I made 10 grand on it. Right. I pay more money than that on coaching.
It's so funny you say that. I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, 6 figures of coaching. It would have been nice if I could make 10 grand every time I had to learn a lesson.
Yeah. But most of the time the lessons we learned are expensive. Right. And you're either going to pay it through coaching, which I'm a huge believer in coaching because I think it short cycles the learning process and gives you a way to honestly it's cheaper than doing it the hard way, or you're going to pay the hard way, right? You want to know how to do something, go to somebody that's 2 steps ahead of you that's already done it, pay them, ask them how to do it. They will teach you, and it will cost you half as much as if you try to do it yourself and mess it up.
We are not good as human beings. Our minds are not set up to understand opportunity costs, and we're not set up to understand, the whole sunk cost fallacy. And so a lot of people, they avoid spending money like the plague on something that can save, we're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. And
yep.
What's amazing about that is the best coaches out there, and there's definitely been a few that, maybe I regretted giving money to, but they're, for the most part, they were great. And the ones that were great were the ones that addressed what you said in the beginning, which is figuring out what you don't, you don't know what you don't know, that where you are ignorantly obsolescent to certain things. Like, I have no idea what I don't know. That's where a coach comes in. And so at the very least, not only at worst case scenario, they're going to explain to you what you don't know. Best case scenario, they're going to educate you so you do know now what you do know. And that to me has been the single biggest value lever for in any coaching relationship I've ever been in, is they demystify, they pull back the curtain. Here's all the things you don't know yet. And here's how we're going to address all these. And to me, that's like rocket fuel to success.
Yeah. And they should also be challenging you on the things that you do think you know. Right. And so I had a conversation with my coach last week, 2 weeks ago, no matter. And I said, as we go to start hiring somebody, like, I don't expect that when we hire somebody that they're going to have the same level of urgencies that I do in how we communicate with customers. That was my, state of mind. And he's like, why not? Your culture. If that's the urgency that you want in your culture, then that's the policy you create. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Why shouldn't they have the same level of urgency that I do? It's my business.
Yep.
So
that's a great point. Yeah. And that, like, a lot of people hear culture and they hear woo woo. But I think culture is exactly how you lead from the front. I mean, if the people behind you don't see you, doing all the things that you're telling them to do, yeah, they're going to lose respect for you. They're going to lose respect for your company. So if you expect that out of the other people, then you need to not only demonstrate it, but then also convey it in terms of expectations. I think that's awesome advice. And that would have got me out of a lot of problems that I've had over the years, falling in, like, bringing the wrong people on board. Because, I for the most part, I've been pretty good about demonstrating my expectations, but I'm also, for whatever reason, I'm constantly giving people passes, constantly cutting slack. And I don't think what I've realized is I always said it was kind. I thought it was just me being nice. It's actually me being cowardly. And it's not kind. It's not kind to let people persist at a job that they're not appreciated at. It's not kind to not let them find a place that fits their culture. And so, that hits home, because I think you got a great guy giving you advice. I'll tell you that right now.
It's also not kind to the other people that work for you to give them the rest, right? It brings 100%. The whole place down.
Yep. One of the it's so easy to mistake kindness for weakness, especially when I'm looking internally, because everybody writes themselves as the hero in their own story, right? Everybody thinks they're the main character, and so sure. It's very easy to say, oh, it's not me wanting to avoid an awkward conversation, I'm just being nice. And yeah, but you're right, everybody else sees that. Like, imagine doing that with your kids. What kind of asshole parent would you be if you were super nice to one kid and then a jerk to all the other ones? I mean, that's not that'd be an awful environment to grow up in. So getting back to the people who come to you, and I actually wrote this down earlier because I want to ask you the difference between renting and selling. So there's people who hit a certain point where they have to move, or they got a job transfer, or for whatever reason, they don't have a ton of equity in their house, or maybe they do. Regardless, there's a certain decision point they come to. They say, do I retain this asset and create a portfolio out of it, or do I sell the damn thing and move on with my life? When your friends come ask you, when your clients come ask you, like, how do you help them make that delineation between those two options?
Yeah, I think it comes down to personal goals and personal preferences. And so they are somebody that's already been thinking about real estate, and it's something that's on their mind. It might be a good first step into it. If they become this, landlord by, accidental landlord, and they don't have any desire to do tenant screening, and they're not going to hire a property manager because they want to keep all the money instead of giving up 10% or whatever it is, then the chances of them having a poor experience are very high. And so, like all things, if you're going to do something, you should do it the right way. And I'm not saying that hiring a property manager is the right way or the wrong way. It's a way, right? But if you don't want it to impact your life and you want to maintain it for some reason, like, do that, but do it the right way. But also, what could you do with the money if you were to pay off? Now, in a lot of cases, people need to sell their home so they can put it into their next home to, play that equity ladder game. And I've gone through this mentally in my head too. Like, we have a house, it's got a great mortgage, when we move, why wouldn't we keep it as a rental? And, it would probably cash flow pretty well. But at the end of the day too, that's a couple $100,000 worth of equity that I can put into another house, and are you better consolidating on one asset versus spreading things out when I have other avenues? So there's no right answer to that question. I really don't think there is. I think it is where you are at mentally. It is where you are at in your life, and where you really want to be in 10 years. And does that decision that you're going to make have a positive or negative impact on your 10-year goal or 5-year goal, or however far ahead you want to think? But if you're not thinking at least 5 years ahead, then you're not doing.
Well, and I have heard people say that if you're going to buy a home, and your intent is to sell it for, some sort of margin, some sort of profit, do not hold it for less than 7 years. Like, plan on a 7-year hold. I've heard some people say 5. I've heard some people say 10. What do you have any dog in that fight?
I don't really have a dog in that fight. I think it has to do more with equity, right? With COVID, homes that were bought 5 years ago, drastically went up in price. And also there's just life things that happen. Like, I have to move cities or whatever. But generally, and this is an investment kind of philosophy as well. Anytime you touch your money, it gets poisoned a little bit and shrinks. And so think about that in equity of a home, right? Because
that's really cool. I've never heard that before. I love that.
So if I have a house and it's got equity, when I leave that house, it's not, I just don't take that 200,000, right? Now I have to pay realtor fees, which maybe, unless you're doing it for sale by owner, but you've got closing costs. Now you've got a new loan that you've got closing costs on. You probably have some additional costs to move into that you're going to take in there. And so now that 200 turns into 187, right?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
easily, 180. And so then you do that again in 2 years, and you basically just are burning the appreciation that you gained over the last 2 years. And so you do need to stay in a house for a certain amount of time, or at least hold it for a certain amount of time to just get over that, that poisoning of capital every time you touch it. And this is this is a philosophy that goes for, stocks and stuff too. Just
that's really smart.
Leave them, look at them, don't touch them.
Don't touch them. I love that. That's so cool. There are probably some red flags that I know you've had to have identified, and I'm just curious what they are, because if somebody's in the audience listening to this who's thought about maybe getting into this game, do you, Loren, have any red flags that when you see this exhibited in a landlord or a would-be landlord where you're like, dude, not going to go well for you. Let's maybe chart a different path for you.
If you gave somebody $50 for 3 weeks and on the 22nd day they hadn't reached out to you, are you texting them and calling them? Are you losing? What kind of anxiety level do you have about that? If any of those questions are yes, I would lose sleep over it, or I would be calling them immediately, or I would be upset with them because I gave them the $50 and they get back to me. Exactly. Being a landlord is probably not the right way to go for you. Things are going to be late. Things are going to happen. You're going to get a call in the middle of the night that says, hey, a water line broke or a window got broken or something. And you have to either have the ability to let things just roll off your back and think, okay, we'll figure this out, or develop that ability. But if you're high stress and high anxiety person, like, your life's going to be miserable.
Wow. The tax question that comes into this, and I know a lot of people will artificially make a rather bad decision for their overall lifestyle based on what is, at the end of the day, it's an unfortunate, but it's sometimes a small matter of taxes. Some people decide that they don't want to have capital gains, so they're not going to sell the damn house. They're going to rent it out. And I'm like, okay, you're still going to pay them one day. It's just not tomorrow. And by the way, now you're, putting your hand through a freaking grinder of pain and misery, because you don't really want to be a landlord to avoid that. Do you see sometimes people making bad decisions based purely on the tax implications?
Do you know what the trigger of paying taxes is?
What's that?
Making money. So if you don't ever want to make money, you'll never have to pay taxes. Now, do I think that you should just give Uncle Sam as much money as humanly possible? Absolutely not. The government has put things in place in order for us as business owners and landlords to avoid some of those taxes. Mm-hmm. But to avoid something that could make you money because you don't want to pay taxes on it is silly. That's like someone saying, I don't want my bonus this year because the government's just going to take 40% of it. Like, what about the other 60%? I'll take it. I'll take your 60% if you don't want it.
You don't want it?
So too many people spend too much time worrying about how do I reduce my taxes. And I look at them and it's like, you got to make money to pay taxes. Why don't you worry about that first? Worry about the tax thing later.
So when somebody who has an IRA, they have money set aside, whatever they want to invest in, and they come have dinner with you, and they would rather that you just take their money. How does that the yield or that income that goes back to that investor, is that a capital gains? How is that typically handled?
Well, if it's an IRA, then it's protected, so it doesn't matter until they are retired, right? Or they pull it out. So that's kind of a moot point. But for the people that are investing with me outside of a tax deferred account, just personal, whatever, they're going to get a K1. So we have two funds. So we have a debt fund and we have an equity fund. And so when I first start talking to investors, almost the first thing I always ask is, what are your goals? Are you here to talk to me about it for wealth generation, cash flow, or tax, alleviation? Because those are the real three strategies for investing in funds. And if they say, I'm here to, alleviate some of my tax burden, and I don't have anything for you right now, you need to go find, and I'll give them a list of names of, these are people that do syndications. They're going to buy large multifamily properties or mobile home parks or self-storage, and they're going to do a cost segregation study, and they're going to capture all that loss, and they're going to pass it on to their investors, and that can help you with some of your, tax burden.
Yep.
But if you want to generate wealth, yes, I can help you there. If you want cash flow, I can help you there. And we can talk about which of my funds is the best path for that. And at some point, we will probably have some sort of tax benefited fund where we do that kind of stuff. Just aren't there yet. But you need to know what you're trying to do.
Got it.
And if it's like, well, I don't want to pay taxes, I want to make more money and I want to grow my wealth. Like, well, then you're not reinvesting it. So you're not growing your wealth. And if you're doing either of those, if you're trying to get then you've got to show a loss. So that's going to hurt one of those other. And if you're just trying to grow wealth, then you're not taking money. You're not, growing your cash flow. So what you're trying to do, and it doesn't have to be across everything, chunk of money, right? If these guys that I talk to, they all have to be accredited investors. So they all have, $1 million net worth, excluding their primary residence. Or, and I said guys or girls, or they have, making $200,000 to $300,000 a year, depending on if they're married or not. So they have capital. It's just a matter of how much are they going to put in this? They're diversifying. How much are they going to put into my stuff, and what their goal is it? Because maybe they have a big chunk of it in bonds, right? That's just there. That's their safe money. That's what they're growing their wealth with. And this is to try to either increase that, or maybe they want to use that to pay for their boat or pay for their house. I know one of my investors, he invested enough money to me that he paid for his house payment and his 2 car payments on a monthly basis. And he's like, that's how much I'm going to leave in that fund. That's how he decided what was his investment into that fund.
So he kind of reverse engineered it. I love it. That's really cool.
Yeah. So great investor. So text me once a quarter, but
that's great. That's exactly what that's the kind of guy we'd all want on board. It's like the tenant who never calls you, that never texts you. That's awesome. So the biggest, I'd say force right now that I think is educating people about real estate investing is social media. Obviously, YouTube plays a huge role in that, podcasts. And, I used to, when I was in the Marines, I would, watch movies today and I would say, oh my God, his uniform is all dicked up, or no, that's not how you shoot a weapon, or that's not how you clear a room, all this stuff. What are like the biggest things that drive you insane? Like, I know there has to be like things that you see, because from your position as an expert now, sitting where you sit, you have to see some of these things on social media, especially on like YouTube, where you're like, what are you guys talking about? I mean, would you lay a few out there for us so we know what to look for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the flip that went in 2 weeks, right? The home and garden TV type stuff. You see Chip Gaines hit it with a sledgehammer, and then it freeze frames, and all of a sudden it's all built out. And I'm just, there was a lot of editing that happened there, right? So that's not social media, but that's a good one. I think you see a lot of, or at least I see a lot of people on social media, like, well, the first thing you got to do is you got to get a business name, and you got to set an LLC up, and you do, all these things. Like, those things take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, right? Like, go find the freaking deal first.
Yes.
Like that's the first thing you need to do. Don't worry about the LLC. You can get it under contract in your own name and then change it while it's on the closing table to the LLC that you need. So, people are trying to, I give them credit. They're trying to take action, right? That's what we want to do. We want to take action. But if you're spending a bunch of time, like, this is my logo and this is my business name, and I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out and make it just perfect. Like, most people's first business, including mine, cease to exist, right? Yep. You're going to go through a lot of different iterations. And so my first business is going to be this rocket ship to the moon, and I got to have everything perfect from the beginning. Like, just throw something out there. What's the name of the street you live on? Call it Peachtree Capital, right? And move on with your life. So find the deal.
That's very cool. But 2-part question. In your opinion, what you see out there on social media, what's the most overrated investment strategy and the most underrated?
So right now, I think that sub 2 is one of the most overrated. And I'm not saying that sub 2 can't work. I think that the way that a lot of people are trying to execute it, where there's basically no equity there. They're coming in, they're trying to help someone, but they're, taking 95, you're getting 95% LTV. They're actually possibly hurting the person they're trying to help, because now you sub to it, that person moves out. There's a promise of additional money in the future. The mortgage is still in that person's name. Now that tenant comes in, they stop paying. That person doesn't have any money, can't absorb it. And all of a sudden, now that person's mortgage, who you're trying to help, is not getting paid, and it's hurting their credit. Right. And so that one is something that I'm very cognizant of when I see people doing it. Like, I think it's great if you have the cash to do it and you can make sure it's going to work and you're not putting yourself in a bad equity position, but there's too many of those that have just gone poorly. And then underrated, I think that honestly, and it's maybe sound a little cliche, I think house hacking is underrated. Like, a lot of people talk about it, but I've only met a handful of people that actually do it. They're almost everyone that I know that done it is like 22, male,
Yep.
But
the podcast guys, podcast bros.
Yeah. Well, not just talking about, like, the actual people I know
they actually
that are
do
doing
it.
it.
Yeah. And these are these smart guys. And just for the audience, so they know, it's where you buy a duplex, triplex, quadplex, use traditional financing to get it. But then now you rent out these other 2-3 units, and now they're paying your mortgage plus some. And it's a great start.
Yeah. And for me, it wouldn't have worked because I already had 3 kids when I started. And so to say, hey, we're going to move out of our 20 or 3,000 square foot house and go live in a duplex, my wife would have not moved with me. She was like, you can go if you want, bye. But yes, I think that's a great strategy. But I think at the core of that strategy is the grit and the desire to work and do something. It's knowing that it's a long path, right? Because the strategy there is, I'm going to buy a duplex. I'm going to live in it for a year. I'm going to get it going. And then I'm going to move and buy another duplex and then keep that one and then go and go and go. Right. And when you start down that path, you know that you can't leave that duplex for 1 year. So every duplex you add is a year. You're looking 6-7 years down the road off the beat. Right. And so that grit and that desire to work, that's underrated. You have to be able to have that kind of long-term mindset and that ability to do things that are uncomfortable for yourself, whether that be knocking on a door when you don't want to go knock on doors, making a cold call when you don't want to cold call, doing a house hack when you don't want it, when you want to just live in an apartment, hang out with your friends, working on the weekends when you have a W-2, because that's when you have time to work, getting up at 5 a.m. and working after, not doing things with your friends. I went through a season of what I called the season of no, which I stole from Alex Hormozy, where basically if it wasn't family related, it wasn't work related, and it wasn't real estate related, I didn't do it for 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the best, most productive 2 years of your life too, if you were to look at it.
Yeah. I was exhausted, but
like you said, you either put all that pain into a small period or you spread it out, and you chose the former, and here you are. Rapid fire. I'm curious, is there a metric that you kind of singularly focus on and obsess over? And if so, what is it?
So the two things that I measure the most, and these are going to be kind of odd probably for what your question is I work out every day. I have since the 27th of December, 2023. And so I track that on my wall here every single day. And the reason I track that every single day is because if I ever miss an X, I have to start over. And the working out is physical, but there's a huge mental piece to it. And when you train yourself to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and work out, even when you don't want to, when you force yourself to sit on the exercise bike for 15 or 20 minutes, when you have the flu, when you have family events all day and you end up doing burpees at 10 o'clock at night in a hotel, right? Those are things that I don't want to do. But when I make myself do them, it makes me mentally stronger so that I can take that mental strength and transition it into, I don't want to go sit at this conference all day. I don't want to call this borrower that is late on his payment. I don't want to make that next call to originate that next loan, right? but I do because I can, because I've built that strength.
I love that. No, that's a great metric. And I was good, but you kind of answered my question. You don't care. You have the flu, you're dropped dead. You don't miss a day, no matter what. So are your sick days, are the workouts a little bit, maybe less? You're not doing 100 burpees if you have the flu. Do you figure out something different?
So when you're working out that many days, they're not hero workouts every day, right? Like Sunday is a 30 to 40 minute yoga workout, because my body needs to stretch. When I have the flu, like, there's an exercise bike. I sit on my exercise bike, and
life sucks anyway. So it's going to suck when you're pedaling.
Move my body and break a sweat. Right. So it's not about like just beating yourself into the dirt every day. It's about constantly doing something that breaks a sweat and is more than what you want to do. I don't count it if it's like, oh, I went for a walk and it was enjoyable and I wanted to go for a walk. Nope. Doesn't count. It has to be something that actually breaks a sweat and is hard.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's a second metric you were about to get to.
Yeah. I mean, the other metric I do is also a personal growth thing. It's just books I've read, right? Number of books. Okay. And it doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction. It's about 50-50. And I track that just because I have a goal I want to get to at the end of the year. And if I don't track it, then I will lose sight of it. And it'll be like April to July and I will have barely read. Right. And so it just goes to my overall like philosophy of consistency plus time equals success. And so you can put that formula into anything you want. If you consistently do something over a long enough period of time, you will have, I won't even say success, you will have an outcome, because that could be, I consistently eat Taco Bell for every day for 5 years. And now the effect is I am 50 pounds overweight. Right?
Let's sign up for that. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Except for all those around you.
Except for the 5 a.m. bike rides. Yeah.
So you can use that formula for anything. You just have to you back calculate it. What do I want the effect to be? Yep. And then how long do I have to do something? And what is that thing? Right.
That's amazing. Yeah. Those are two really, really awesome. And you're right. I am surprised those are the metrics that you assess. But and again, I'm not surprised. I mean, you're obviously a Hermosi guy. I'm sure you're familiar with Jocko Willink, discipline equals freedom. And those little building blocks of having that discipline, those small wins every day add up to, really big wins. So one of the things I want people to find out more about you, where they go. Before we get there, I just want to say, for those people who have ever thought about going down this landlord path, for those who have, really looked at one side or another, there's a few big lessons that Loren threw out at us today that I would love for you to go back and listen to. But primarily the ones that stuck out to me were, cash flow isn't always what it appears to be, because there's always going to be things chipping away at that bottom line. Opportunity cost matters a lot. So don't sit there and just analyze the deal to death. Wrong action always beats inaction, because in the end, wrong action, you're still going to learn something from it. And number 4, your equity needs to be intentional. What you're putting your money toward, it needs to go towards something that you are intimately familiar with. You've understood the basics, whether you hired a coach, maybe you just worked with an expert who taught you all of those unknowns, and they revealed that. That's where your equity needs to go. So if you're still sitting on, equity out there and you're debating whether or not to rent, to sell it, or, run the numbers, find a fund like Lawrence, don't just follow all of the tropes that you see on the social media. Don't follow the guy who rented a Lamborghini for a day and he's in front of a rented mansion, showing his cash off. That's just the stupidest, most cringe shit I've ever seen. And I can't believe those guys get any marketing, but people fall for it. So the best thing to do is seek guys out like Loren. Loren is as you've clear, he's not embarrassed to tell you where he failed. He's not embarrassed to tell you where he succeeded. He seems like a very open book. I've talked with him a few times. So I would highly recommend you get in touch with a guy like that. And, if he can't find you a place for you in his fund, I bet you he can find the right place for you. So, Loren, where should people go to follow you if they want to learn more about your approach?
Yeah, so everybody can follow me on Instagram at Invest with Loren, or Facebook. It's Loren Wernette, so Loren Wernette. Those are the two places, also on LinkedIn. And then if anybody just wants to reach out, it's Loren at reidoubleclose.com.
That's awesome. And for everybody too out there, I will be including all of Loren's contact info that I have in the show notes. Not your personal number. I won't give that out, but no,
my personal number's on our website, so I don't care.
Damn. No, buddy, it's Valentine. There's a lot of lonely dudes out there going to be calling you, man. I'm not going to do that to you.
Just because the phone number's there doesn't mean I have to answer the phone. I learned a long time ago that gets 6 o'clock, I don't answer the phone anymore. So there's more important things in life than work. Work's important, but it's not worth anything if I can't be with my kids and my wife.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, it's funny. I was telling you, but before I started this live stream, I was like, I got to turn off my phone. Someone's going to call me. So I put on sleep. Sure enough, my wife calls me. I'm like, yeah, you think we do we do this thing, right? This whole live stream thing every day at noon, or every Friday at noon, whatever.
It makes you feel better. My wife called me while we were on this deal. So
yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, hey, at least the right people are checking in on us. Well, dude, I cannot thank you enough. You're always such a great discussion partner. I love having the chats with you. I always learn a ton, and I thought I knew a lot. And after talking to you, it turns out I don't know as much as I thought I did. So thank you for that. And for everybody else out there, if you're thinking about selling your home, and you've already decided, hey, I can't keep it, I do not want to retain it, I am looking to actually move this thing, I need the money out of it. And if you want a step-by-step plan to do it yourself, to keep even more equity out of the deal, so you don't have to pay unnecessary commissions to real estate agents like me, go ahead and go to foolprooffisbo.com/checklist, grab your master checklist. It's a 7-day launch plan. We'll teach you how to get your home in the market in 7 days or less. And gosh, you know what? If there's anything we can do for you, you got my contact info. We're going to have Loren's in the show notes. So until next week, I would love it. If anybody has any questions that we didn't get to today, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and I'll ask Loren offline if he might be able to give his opinion. And if I can answer it too, I'll do the same thing. So Loren, once again, thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on, Tim. It was a pleasure as always.
Of course, bro. Take care. All right, everybody. And follow Loren's advice. Don't forget, it's Valentine's Day tomorrow. My gosh.
Right.
That's a public service announcement from the stars if I ever heard one. So all right.
Opportunity cost of not following up on that. So
all right. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. See you, Loren. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Foolproof FSBO podcast. For free tools and step-by-step guides to sell your home with confidence, head on over to foolprooffisbo.com/podcast. That's foolprooffisbo.com/podcast. And we'll see you next week.